Hello, folks. Welcome back to World War II TV and a new week on the channel. And later in this Ask Me Anything, I do want to talk about the serious subject of AI, how it affects history on YouTube and beyond. But I'll start off with some of your questions of that have been building up in the sidebar while I've been waiting to go on live. So I'll start with them. Some of them very easy, so let's bring them up on screen. From a skeptical observer, so Paul, there are a few for how big is your flat cap collection? So I have about 20 probably, but I only really regularly wear about 5 or 6. This one used to be my favorite outside one. This one now stays in my office by my desk. I don't go out in this one now because the lining is going, but it's just my lucky hat or my unlucky hat. So I've got about 15 or 20, something like that. Do I like crepes? I like crepes. I have more galettes than I have crepes. Galettes being the savory type of dish, the crepes being the sort of the sweet ones with orange or caramel and things like that. I like them as well, but galettes are a big thing in Normandy and Brittany, so I like a nice galette. There's a restaurant in town called the Moulin de la Galette, the Galette Windmill or the Galette Mill. And I go there, and Mag tends to have something with goat's cheese and honey. I will often have something with pepper, onion, chicken, saucisson, merguez, fresh spicy sausage. Sometimes I'll have the burger one, which comes with a steak haché or burger meat. Do the people in my local cafe? Well, I don't really go to a cafe because someone's questions later on is about whether I like tea or coffee. And I'm in Bayeux, Terry. I just saw that one there. Or Alan, Terry, Alan. I don't drink coffee and I don't drink tea, so I don't really go to cafes. Mag isn't really a big cafe person. My local pubs, there's 2 or 3 in Bayeux that I frequent. The Conquérant, which is down in the Tapestry, the Montmartre, and the Ooh La La, all of which are restaurant brasseries. I do sometimes have cider there, by the way, but I don't know what I'm talking about with cider, so I rely on someone else choosing whether they want, a particular one. I like it when it's on draft. There's a couple of places with draft cider. Anyway, do the people in my local cafe appreciate my YouTube channel? Well, the thing is, a lot of the people I know who go to pubs are French speaking, so they don't watch English language channels. So no, they don't necessarily know that I have a YouTube channel. They would know me as part of the guiding community. Now, among my tour guide friends, there are various ones. Elisa, who is French, who watches my channel. Who else is there? There's Alex, a Brit who lives in Caen. He watches my channel. So yes, those that are kind of in the World War II world do watch my channel. But a lot of people in Bayeux don't even know what it is I do and don't even know, in some ways, who I am. So that's the first one done. So going to the next question from you, Skeptical Observer. Have I visited Orador, Glen? I was there 10 years ago last week. And that was the one time I was there. It was a pretty cool trip. I went with 5 or 6 tour guide friends from Normandy. And what was cool about it is we got to spend about an hour and a half or so with then one of 2 survivors of the massacre. Now I think there aren't any left. Robert Hebras was his name. He was, I think, 12 or 13 at the time, maybe 14 or 15, and he allowed us to do an interview, which I videoed. In fact, I have that. If you can speak French, I can send it to you. What was interesting about that, I'm going off down a rabbit hole already, is that he had told that story many, many, many times. And I guess part of the processing for him was that he didn't particularly show much emotion while telling it, but then he takes school group, or he was taking school groups there like once or twice a month back in that time. So I guess if you've told that story hundreds of times, you would get to the point where for your own kind of mental health, you'd stop being emotional. But towards the end of the interview, when we asked a couple of, I forget what questions we asked, but we kind of went off subject a bit. When we started talking about other things in World War II, he got quite emotional. He got quite emotional about I think seeing the footage of the Germans marching down the streets of Paris, things like that upset him. But yeah, so I have visited Orador-sur-Glane. Cognac or Scotch? I don't think I've ever actually tried cognac. or brandy, to be honest. Well, I was going to say I'm a Scotch guy, but I'm not a Scotch guy. I'm a whiskey guy. I will quite happily have a Scotch or an Irish whiskey. I do like American whiskeys, Canadian whiskeys as well, but I tend to sort of spread out my occasions of having whiskey because I'm getting older and the hangovers hurt me. But yeah, I am a whiskey drinker, so that's that one done. Roderick, Beatles or Stones, Boxers or Brief, Guinness or Doombar. So 1, 2, and either. No, I'm a Beatles man. Although I can see that Stones are a better live act. And if I had a chance to go and see them live, or I'd had a chance to see them live maybe 20, 30 years ago, maybe they would nudge the Beatles. But the Beatles, for me, produced the best long-term music. Boxers or briefs. I actually wear boxer briefs. I'm in the middle there. Guinness or Doombar, either, frankly. The problem of France is they don't have British-style bitters on tap. Well, why would they? I live in France. So I switched to drinking Guinness when I moved to France. So there's 3 or 4 places that do Guinness in Bayeux. So that would be my pub in Normandy drink. If I'm back in the UK, I would have Doombar or London Pride or Old Speckled Hen, something like that. Although I will drink IPA in bars in Bayeux, but that's probably enough alcohol related shows. Don't fire too many questions in the sidebar yet, because otherwise I have to scroll back through them all and I won't see them. So kind of be a bit hesitant about firing too many other. We just won't get them. So just maybe listen for 5 minutes and then I'll tell you, as Gary asked. Gary said, presumably you'll be giving a heads up when we can start asking questions. So just for the moment, just hold off and I'll try and deal what is there in the waiting room, so to speak. Quick one from Broderick, Beach Boys or Beatles? So we've done Beatles or Rolling Stones, Beach Boys or Beatles. I probably listen to the Beach Boys more often because Pet Sounds is one of my favorite albums of all time. So Beatles, I probably prefer on a broader sense, but I find myself not listening to their music as much because I don't know why. But when I do, I enjoy it. But when I'm driving, I do like a little bit of Beach Boys. Some of the greatest hits, Pet Sounds, not the early surf stuff, and not the kind of later when it was getting a bit weird stuff. Kind of that solid mid-60s stuff. After the surf era, when Brian Wilson was producing the greatest stuff. So there we are. Jim Walsh asked, how far ahead am I booked with shows? Well, booked with shows, I'm only like 2 or 3 weeks ahead in that I have the exact dates worked out. In terms of my rough idea of what I'm going, I have a rough idea what themes and things I'm going to do till about maybe March or April next year. The question about running out of suitable guests, that is the most common question I get asked, and particularly people send it to me in emails, things like that, and comments on the channel. But you must be running out of ideas. So I have 2 or 3 different lists. I have a Word document I keep on my desktop, which has, I think it's at like 12-point text A4 size, and that's into, I think, 4 pages, maybe 5 pages. So each line is a potential subject and guess. So there's a couple of hundred there. Then I have bookmarks within Chrome where I have people's websites saved that are people that I've either contacted or will want to contact or have been in touch with or have been recommended to me. So that would add another couple of hundred at least guests. Then there's the people I've had on before who I've yet to ask back for a second time. So that would run into another few hundred because I'm going to be hitting 2,000 live streams sometime next year. I'm just going to have a small sip of beer. Okay, quite a large sip of beer. So I have enough content. I have enough ideas to keep me going, frankly, for as long as I'm alive, I think, where we are. And of course, it would get to a certain point where even if I had run out of subjects, I started this now 5 to 6 years ago. After sort of 4 years, another 4 years would be then 10 years from the early shows. So it would be worth reconsidering the same subjects because so many of them are perennially interesting. Market Garden, Normandy, the why behind things like Holocaust, things like that. So basically this has got as long a shelf life as I want to do this. I always remember a very early show I did with Frank McDonough, who is on my list of someone to invite back, because the third part of his study of the Nazis is out. The third part is about the Holocaust. So he did a book on the Weimar Republic, then he did a 2-volume book or series on the Nazis, and then the third volume of the Nazi one, or the fourth one if you include the Weimar book, which was technically a separate book, is about the Holocaust. But he said when he first appeared, he said, I fully hope my book and my work will be out of date in 10 years, but I fully hope it'll be out of date in 5 years. And I really like that remark, because it suggests that he is someone who doesn't agree with the idea or the principle, the notion that there is a definitive book on certain subjects. Now, I would kind of argue against that. I think there are a few subjects where there may be definitive historians or definitive work. I mean, an example that springs to mind is Neil Barber, the Brit, my friend, who has written about the 6th Airborne in Normandy. That doesn't mean that the 6th Airborne outside of Normandy, perhaps in the Ardennes, isn't worth studying, or the training of the 6th Airborne, or the 6th Airborne in later operations. But in terms of the 6th Airborne in Normandy, I think he's taken that about as far as anybody can. But that's, you know, and there are some niche subjects. Remember the one I did a few years ago, which I always think of, about the anti-locust campaign. Well, that guest presumably had done the definitive study on that niche thing. So in 10 years, a few years' time, when I've been at this for 10 years, it'll be worth revisiting the early subjects anyway. So the point is, there's just unlimited amount of subjects to go. So don't worry about me running out of ideas. It's just insane, my lists. So Terry asked about French subjects. Yeah, that's a weird one. I have a lot of French friends here in Normandy who are from the guiding community. They work in museums. And they all just, when I mention, can you be a guest? They all just go, oh, I'm not really sure. And these are people who speak really good English, often better than some English people's English. And I know the language is part of their issue. Part of it is they just, I don't know, they're not sure about the live thing and doing it in English. I don't know, but I struggle to get French guests. I think it's going to be one of those things, like a bit like a dam breaking. I think I'll find that one French historian at some point who will open the floodgates, hence the analogy, and open the doors to more French guests. But it is a trouble getting guests. Andreas asked how the booking for next year's tours are going. So the British tour in October is already like 3/4 full. So that's good. Not that we haven't got a few spaces left. So we're doing the Duke, the Dominion, United Kingdom and Empire tour of Normandy for 6 days in October next year. More details on my D-Day Historian website, which you can find. The April American tour is like 1/3 to 1/2 full. So that, and it's probably because I did the one in October last year. So that a few people took that one, but I will do another video about it. I'll do another thing like this. But if you're watching this and you're thinking, what's this about tours? What's Woody talking about? Well, I run these 2 annual tours, 6-day group tours with a bus, staying in Bayeux. And this year, taking bookings for next year, I'm doing an American tour of 6 days in April and a British Commonwealth Duke tour in October for 6 days. So there's no overlap between the itineraries. So we'll cover that in a future thing. But yeah, bookings are going well, very well, thank you. Jim asked about have I considered doing a show? I had the question bookmarked and then I unbookmarked it by mistake, so I'm not going to scroll back. So Jim asked about would I consider doing a show on the history of camouflage on the channel? Yeah, definitely. If I could find the right expert. The only thing about camouflage is that it might get a tendency of getting into the Nazi stuff a bit too much, because the biggest proponents of camouflage in World War II were the Germans. The Japanese didn't use too much camouflage apart from some straw and stuff on their helmets. British, we had the odd, the Denison smock for airborne troops, things like that. Americans a little bit in the Pacific, and then the reversible stuff. But the one nation that was sort of ahead of the game in terms of camouflage in World War II was the Third Reich. But then that brings in the SS to the subject, and it could end up being a bit of it could appear to be a kind of a Nazi fanboy show. So if I was a general military historian and doing a general military history, then something covering camouflage from the late 19th century up to the present day would be really good. But yeah, we've done as someone said, okay, we have done the show about the myth about the camouflage being mistaken for SS troops, the Americans, and we did the other one with Gareth Scanlon about the 6th Armored Brigade in Italy wearing camouflage smocks made from Italian patterned camouflage that had been used for shelter halves or something. So we have done it in a little bit here and there, but a history of camouflage, no, we haven't done that. So no. So let me scroll back and see what things we have there. This is when I have to go, because there's too many questions I have to go back through. Just talk amongst yourselves while I'm going back and finding some. That's why I could try and keep it. I know you're great at chatting with each other, but if you can kind of just keep it to the questions, it's easier for me. If I had some kind of manager who could save the questions for me, it'd be really easy, but I don't. So just kind of limit it to the questions, and that way I've got more chance of actually finding them when I do. So I'm just bookmarking a few now, and then I will go some. Let's do this one, a little bit of housekeeping. Could you tell me more about your patron levels and what the difference is between them and a bit of promotion? Well, it's basically different. The only difference is the amount people offer. Some patron setups with other podcastings have all sorts of benefits of you get to see stuff first, you get the videos before the general public do. I have never gone for that, despite that being some people's advice, because I don't like the idea of some of my hardcore viewers are people who, for various reasons, can't afford to help me financially, which is fair enough. There were points in my life where I would not have been able to financially help a channel. So if I did the, it's like I'm going down a rabbit hole already. So hold off with questions because I'm going to sip a beer while I compose my thoughts. It's like those charity auctions for things like for children in need in the UK. Okay, now I love the idea of charity auctions, but what happens is someone will go on and say, here's a trip to a VIP trip to see Paul McCartney live, right? And then the auction happens. Well, what happens is the person with the most money wins it. I would like to see a system where if there's something going for children in need, or name the charity organization event of your choosing, is that there's some sort of lottery thing where if 1,000 people pledge £1, then a random draw is done, and then the winner of that becomes the person to go and meet Paul McCartney, if I carry on with the analogy. The problem with that is that then becomes gambling, and then that enters gambling laws, whereas an auction does not enter gambling because it's... So I understand why it doesn't. But to answer the question about why I don't offer particular perks on Patreon, it goes against the principles of how I set this channel up. I set this channel up in the middle of lockdown when we needed something to bring us together, when historians needed an outlet to talk about the war, we needed to get together. So the other thing some people do is they do like a question and answer show for their patrons. Well, I'm doing a question and answer show now, and my problem is I don't have the spare time to do special stuff for patrons. So the bottom line is I request that people support me via Patreon if they basically think that what I'm doing is worthy of support. And I can always do with somebody, because I can't kind of get to the next level where I could really kind of start making some savings and things, because I don't do much battlefield guiding because this takes up all my time. So another 10%, 20% in terms of patrons would be really fantastic going into 2026. So there aren't many different advantages. There are no advantages to going up the tier of levels. The only advantage is, to me, I get the advantage of more money from you. So the people who are brigadiers, so Susan, you, and Tonnet, and various other people who pay $100 a month, they are helping the most to keep this channel going. Then the people at the bottom end, and I don't say there's anything wrong with that, who contribute $2 or $5 or $10 are helping out less than the people who spend out 100. But I don't do that big thing where I send out merchandise, I send out stuff. So there we are. I think I've answered that one there. But it's fair to say that I could do with more people helping. It's something like, I've talked about this in the past, it's like 0.7% of people who watch World War II TV actually contribute financially to it going on. So, you know, I would consider, if you're watching this and you watch a lot of what I'm doing, consider your other subscriptions. If you have a Netflix subscription or Amazon Prime, whatever it would be, Disney, consider how much time you spend here on YouTube and how much time you spend on those things. Now, the thing is, of course, you have to subscribe to some of these services to get their service. Because I put this stuff here free, there's no actual obligation to sign up and offer me money. Hence why I don't hide stuff, which is why is contributing to the fact I don't hide stuff behind that patrons get to see it first stuff. So I can always do with some more patrons. I hope that helps out. So Grant asked, do I listen to other World War II podcasts, perhaps in the car? I mean, I do a bit. I listen, well, I mean, I watch History Underground on YouTube a bit. I watch History Explorer. I tend to listen to Jim and Al. We have ways when I'm driving. There are some long old drives in France, you know, 5-6 hours. My stepdaughter lives in Grenoble, the other side of France. Mag is there right now. She's coming back tomorrow. So if we're driving there, it's like 6, 7, 8 hours, depending on how often you stop. So that's when we put the podcast on, because I can't do music all the time. But my thing is, in some ways, is finding enough time outside of World War II. So although I would, on some level, enjoy listening to more World War II content, I'm spending an inordinate amount of my life in World War II. And I do have to consider, you know, my mental health. It's not been a great year. My mum, I don't want to bleat on about it, and I'm going to be very brief on this, but my mum passed away at the beginning of the year. She'd been ill for a long time. Mag has been dealing with breast cancer, which she is in remission from now. And I don't talk about the personal side, but that was a horrible moment when she was diagnosed. She went through some lots of treatment, and no chemotherapy needed. They caught it early, radiotherapy. She's now, the French don't use the term in remission, but she's on hormone treatment for the next 5 years, but she's sort of in a good place with that. My best mate, Colin Taylor, who some of you remember from appearing on World War II TV, he was on my cameraman. He's been as a guest, a historian. He was the person I spent most time with outside of my home and Mag, and he passed away of cancer of the esophagus back in September, and I miss him. I can't tell you how much I miss him. I did the tribute show to Tim Cook Friday before last, and I didn't know Tim Cook that well, so I was able to deal with it. Mike Bechtold wasn't in a good place mentally about losing Tim Cook, David O'Keefe, Norma, others. People said, why didn't I do a tribute show to Colin, my friend? I mean, I'd love to. I would love to. I wouldn't be able to get through it. I'm starting to cry thinking about it. This weekend with Mag away, it would be a weekend I'd have spent, you know, doing war stuff and drinking Guinness with Colin. So, cool, I've gone on a tangent there. There we are. Without naming names, can you recall your most difficult guest to deal with? Someone grossly unprepared or perhaps a bit too prickly or rude? I mean, there's a couple of people that spring to mind in the early days. I'm not going to name any names, obviously. There are some people who clearly are not quite as used to public speaking as others. They have the information, but it's all a bit new for them. I have no problem with that at all. That's why I'm here, to kind of do some of the heavy lifting for them. There were a couple of people that I had to deal with via their agents. A couple of people didn't understand at the beginning what it is I'm doing, but no big deal. There's one particular big name historian, UK-based, rather senior, whose people demanded a ridiculous amount of money for him to appear, and I said no. I'm not a fan anyway. Anyway, that's going down there, but. Yeah, there's one particular one where I thought, I'm not going to say again who it was 3 or 4 years ago now, where I felt that I was helping answer the questions. He had written the book a few years earlier, but I was filling in the details. I thought, but you should know this, mate. You wrote the book. But 99% of people are nice. And I think it comes back to my golden rule of being nice. If you're nice to people, people are nice back. And I think I would like to think I have a setup here that is open, and I've just spilled some of my beer. Friendly and open and warm, and oh dear, I'm spilling all over the place. It got a bit frothy. I'm gonna just have to mop up my beer now. Just deal with me. I'll be back. Stupid. It was just a big mouthful. I believe in treating people nicely, and if you treat people nicely, they'll be nice back to you. So I really haven't had many issues, and it's honesty. I tell people, look, there's no payment involved in this. I don't get paid when I appear on guests on things, so I don't expect to have to give people money when I come. I haven't got the money. If I started paying all my guests even 20 euros to appear, that would soon deplete my my earnings, and it would all become impossible. I'd have to give up. So. I said beer is mopped up now. Good grief, the host has been spilling his beer. So let's move on. I've got still a couple other ones earmarked. Gina asks, I get there are unlimited topics. What do you think about how to research and decipher World War II records as a topic? We did a bit of that. I covered how to research a family member and how to do research in a previous Ask Me Anything, Gina, maybe 6 months ago, something like that. I don't actually spend a lot of my time in archives. So I'm probably not the kind of person, but if someone could come on and be helpful on that, that would be good. I mean, I'm probably quite good at using the online resources. And one of the things I often reply to people is they say, I'm trying to find out about subject, and they say, there's nothing on the internet. And I go, well, not everything you need is on the internet. The internet is an amazing place. I spend a lot of my time on the internet, but I think people, they're looking up what it is, the Royal Welsh Fusiliers in 1943, and they look online and they can't find much about them. So they assume there's no information out there. I reckon, I'm gonna throw a figure out there. I'm pulling this number out my arse, but I reckon there's probably something like 10 to 15 to 20% of World War II archives are even digitalized, let alone online. So I always respond to people saying, well, what have you started with this? With family members, you've got to get the official records first. So in the US, there's that big thing about the fact that a lot of personnel files were burned back in the 1970s. Absolutely true that there was a fire. That said, they have replaced some of those files from copies now elsewhere, and there are other resources they can draw on. So don't just say there are no files existing. Just be persistent and find. And my advice is to speak to one of the specialists. There are various people. Myra Miller, who's been on the channel talking about the 83rd Division, runs a service in the footsteps, I think her service is called, where she does personal research for people. And these people know how to cut the corners. They know how to streamline it, because it can be very overwhelming just contacting the National Archives in the UK or the NARA in the USA or wherever you are, the Bundesarchiv, and if you know nothing about research, knowing how to do it. But there are people out there who do know. So my broad advice is speak to people who know what they're talking about. And it can often be better to just sort of pay that person some money and have them come back than it is for you to do it yourself, because a lot of it, you end up having to go to the archive in person. So if there's someone living nearby who can go and get you all the war diaries, all the unit details, then that would be good. What historian who has passed would you love to get on the show? James Hornfisher, who was an agent and also an author. He wrote the Last of the Tin Can Sailors would be someone. John Keegan, I suppose. Oh, Richard Holmes in Britain. I'd love to have got him on. Who's the guy who wrote about biographies of Patton, and Kevin Hemel talks about him all the time. Not Martin Middlebrook. The name will come to me. Stephen Ambrose, basically asking why the fuck did he make stuff up. That would be good. This is Michael Ackerman. Would you want to go on more adventures with me next time I'm back in Normandy? Yeah, but we can do other things than Omaha Beach. There is a world beyond the Omaha sector, my friend. But yeah, absolutely, of course. And we'll get you to a pub and get you properly tanked up next time. All these people who are younger than me who don't drink. Have I ever had a guest speaker who you wish you hadn't and then wish no would break? No. I've had some that are better at it than others, and others that are, but there's not one of the 1,870 odd shows. There's not one I think that I regret doing. I mean, I would go back and redo some of the early ones in the sense of I'm better at what I do now, and I think I would do a better job at hosting, and also if I did the show now, there'd be more people watching, because the early ones, there wasn't a bigger live audience. I mean, we've got, according to my data, 150 odd people watching right now, which is really cool. So it'd be nice to redo some of those early ones. But yeah, no, I'm not the kind of person to kind of say, oh, well, that person could have been better, or that. And I know there are podcasts who kind of profile their guests, and is this person going to sell enough books? Is this person a big enough drawer? Is this person a practiced public speaker? And fine, if that's what works for some people, that's fine. That's not how I want to do it. That's not the way I want to be open to everybody. I want people. There's a particular person, American lady, very young by historian standards, who's written a fantastic book about an 8th Air Force guy who ended up being shot down and spent time in Stag 3, and she's done an incredible book, and she's very nervous about the whole process. So I'm gonna have to have a conversation with her. I was going to do it this weekend, and I got sidetracked. Those are the kind of people I persevere with, because there's someone there with an incredible passion, incredible knowledge, with a great book, who I will have to kind of help them through the process and of delivering that information online. But the result will be someone who knows their stuff, and I think everyone will enjoy it. So that's why. So I'm going to go through. David says he'd love to see a book review of The Train and Le Fond de l'Art by Rose Vallant. The whole the Train and Monuments Men, all that kind of stuff. Robert Edsel, who did the Monuments Men, has got his new book about the Netherlands in World War II, the American army in Netherlands, and the Netherlands response to the Americans being there. He's someone I didn't think did podcasts, but I've seen him on a couple of things recently, so I could contact him. The Train is one of my favorite films, World War II films. Burt Lancaster, Jean Moreau, and Michel Simon. I was at Mag and I walked past Michel Simon, who's the old French train engineer who puts the Frank on in the steam engine so that it wears something. I forget the details of it now. We went past a house that had been his summer place outside of Cassis, near Marseille, when we were there on holiday. I have mixed feelings about the whole saving of art concept, because the part of me that likes Shakespeare and Moliere and Victor Hugo and statues and art galleries, which isn't a big part of me. When I visit a city, art galleries aren't near the top of my list, but I will want to go. I do believe in the preservation of art, but I also think that somehow I'd rather see human life preserved first. So I think some of the effort spent to save art, I feel we should feel confused about that. Is any piece of art worth as much as human life? But then the other argument is, what's the point of existence if there isn't art? But yeah, let me go through and find some more questions, because I've got to find some more. Would I lead a tour on the Channel Lines? I have. Well, that's Susan. Hi. I have thought about it. Mag and I have thought about it. We absolutely have thought about it. Yes, I think in the future we will do one. The thing is, we want to include Alderney because it was amazing. One of the best places I've ever been to. The thing about Alderney is there are just days the boat doesn't run. There are days the aircraft doesn't fly from Guernsey. So organizing a tour there, you'd have to build in, and this is what we're thinking about, build in a bit of flexibility. In that you might not get to Alderney on the day you want to get there. You might get stuck, although it's a great place to be, but stuck on the island for a bit longer, a day or so earlier. So we'd have to look at the time of year, the transport reliabilities. But that's the slight stumbling block right now, is just the nature of a tour. Is you've done tours about Alexandra Ritchie and what have you, Susan, is that you know that on Monday you'll be in Hamburg, on Tuesday you'll be in so-and-so. With the Channel Lines and the Alderney bit, there could be a certain amount of flexibility. So yes, there we go. I could do with some voluntary moderators. I've often thought about if I could appoint someone, who would I appoint, and do I want to do that? I mean, the obvious people that spring to mind because they're there every day are the Robertsons, Willie and Nikki. But there's people like Ian Carr, Ian T, Scott Grimwood. It's something I think I might do. I think it would definitely be a good idea. It would be this feeling of relinquishing some control. I mean, it's not that I'm relinquishing control to people I don't trust, but I've always said I've done all this on my own. I do everything, and I do, and I do, and I kind of like that. So there we go. Yeah, I'm going on a tangent then. Let me find some more questions. And then I'll talk about AI. Thanks for becoming a new member, Carla. Nice to have you along. Just to mention the fact that you can become a YouTube member also helps me out a lot. Just to say, though, YouTube take 30% of that, whereas on Patreon, I take 95% for me and World War II TV. So Patreon is better for me than YouTube. By all means, become a member on YouTube. It's good. Oh, there's a good one. Any thoughts on the book Panzer Commander by Hans von Luck? So yes. And I got a funny story about that. Well, not that funny. My copy of Hans von Luck's book was sent to me not that long after Hans von Luck died by his widow, who was maybe his second or third wife. Don't quote me on this, but she was younger than him. And she sent me a copy of the book that she included a book plate that he'd signed. So I have technically a signed copy, or a photo that she had left that he had signed. And we emailed back in time, or sent letters. Might have sent letters, and I felt she was being a bit flirty. Anyway, that's another subject for the day. Anyway, but yeah, the thing about any book that is written by someone who served is that I should go into books like that being objective and say, okay, I'm going to take all this at face. I'm not going to take this at face value. I will need to see evidence that this veteran, this participant, knows what they're talking about. That would be the proper historian's way of looking at any memoir. Is to be in denial of it. I mean, it's the old Christopher Hitchens thing. What can be dismissed without evidence. What can be stated without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. So we should be skeptical. We should, at a veteran's memoir, be in the position where, okay, this guy has to prove to me, or the woman has to prove to me that they know what they're talking about. But I think actually, I like to assume that a memoir is accurate. And then if I go into it open-minded, but with the sense that let's assume this is true, because I think otherwise you'd be a very grumpy, cynical person. The thing about Hans von Luck's book is that we now know some bits of it are blatantly nonsensical. And we're talking about Operation Goodwood, we're talking about the 88s, all that kind of stuff there, which we know didn't happen anything like the way Hans von Luck said it happened. So now we know that. When we look at his book, because we know he not so much got one thing wrong, is he made shit up. How much of the rest of it is suspect? Now, I think a lot of his book is going to be accurate. But now there's one bit I know is wrong and blatant lying. It makes me not trust the whole book. But then I could say that about friends of mine. One of my greatest veteran friends was Donald R. Burgett, who wrote 4 books on the First Airborne. Kurahia, Screaming Eagle in Normandy was his first one. Don was just the dearest friend of mine. Now I know, and he kind of admitted it to me, that some of the stuff in the book isn't the first person stuff. It's someone else in the company had it happen to them, and Don kind of wrote about it in the first person. He was there for all the things he writes about, but he was adding some texture from things that he wasn't quite involved in directly. So he was he exaggerated certain bits. But his writing holds huge value because he conveys with great honesty and emotional resonance the feelings of what it was like to be there. So we've got into the whole thing about discerning, which ties into the AI subject I do want to get to at some point. So thanks again for being a new member. And thanks, Darren, for gifting a World War II TV membership. That's good. let's go back to reading some more questions. Someone asked about Mark Felton. Let's not start on Mark Felton. Don't get me going. When will you? Well, that's good. When will you bring back Michael Miller for Go Lighter Part 2? As soon as he wants to. Mike, if you follow him, if you know follow him on social media, he suffers from crippling anxiety about appearing on stuff. He knows he's got an open invitation. He knows he wants to come and do it. He's dealing with all sorts of things. So he'll come back whenever he wants to come back. So there we are. We'll see. Let me keep going down, and then I'll do some AI stuff. I think we're getting towards the end of stuff of what there is there. This is the annoying bit when I can't. AJP Taylor will be worth speaking to. Oh, Blumenson, Martin Blumenson. Thank you, Andrea. That's who I was thinking of. Definitely. AJP Taylor. Well, another bit of beer there. This is a 7.2% Lagudal. So there'll be a certain point either I need to go to the toilet or I'll be too drunk to carry on. Here's a good one. Then I'll talk about AI. From Seamus. In the Anglosphere, what is the most understudied theatre of war in your opinion? For me, it's either the Balkans or some of the Middle Eastern campaigns. Well, there are various. So thanks for the super sticker, Jay. Just put that one back up. Fantastic, super duper duper. It's got to be the Balkans. I was at one of the We Have Ways conferences. I think it was my second one 2 or 3 years ago. And I was at table with Sol David. I think Giles Milton was there. Peter Caddick Adams was there. And I kind of jokingly said, when is one of you going to do a book on the Balkans? And they all went, I hope someone does, but it won't be me. And the reason they said that is you would have to have access to so many different archives and languages and translators and locals, because to do a proper balanced account, you'd have to go to Croatia, Slovenia, Serbia, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Moldova, Albania, Turkey, because that kind of comes into it. The other countries that I've not mentioned because there are others. None of them particularly like talking to the other one about the past because of the 1990s and the war. It would be a massive, massive, massive campaign. Do the archives exist? Yes, they do, Mary. Hello, and how are you? I know enough. When a couple of years ago, I really got kind of halfway towards getting a Yugoslavia set of shows prepared. And long story short, what happened is that I would make contact with a historian from one country and tell them what I'm doing. And then later on, when I was starting to put the schedule together, they were saying, oh, so you're interviewing other historians? And I would say, yes. Who are you interviewing? And I would give the names. I said, and they kind of said, well, I don't know that I want to be part of it then, because they didn't want to be part of something that someone from another country that they don't necessarily have good relations with. It got very complicated. It's not that these countries don't get on, because on a day-to-day working, yeah, they do. You can cross the border from Croatia to Bosnia-Herzegovina and into Serbia, without any fuss. There's no wars, but there is tension with regards to access to pass. So, but each of the people I met at various universities and museums and things all said they had information. They all said they have archives. They all said they have historical information. It didn't happen, basically. But the archives exist. It would just need someone to be able to sweep aside all the politics. And I think that would be difficult because, and as you say, Darren, what has been said about the Balkans that is in existence in English, there's stuff about the German forces there, because people are always writing about the German. There's lots of stuff about the SS divisions, things like that, and German army there. There's certain amounts of sort of pro-Tito, communist era English language translation of memoirs. And then there's all the SOE, OSS kind of special mission stuff. People like Anthony Quayle was there, the British actor, and Sterling Hayden. But actually kind of understanding the resistance campaigns, I think it was 7 offensives. There's a film called The Fifth Offensive with Richard Burton as Tito, and then the fourth offensive, the third offensive was the Retva. Anyway, nothing's been done about that in English. the Chetniks, because the Chetniks are both the goodies and the baddies and neither. And the Tito's partisans are both the goodies and the baddies and neither. And I got as far as getting like half a shelf of books about the Yugoslavian campaign. And at the end of reading them, I realized there were no outright goodies in the Balkans. And I even include the Western allies who go there, because when I say not goodies, our motives for being there were more about our interests, not the interests of the Balkans people. I think that's fair to say. So, and there were, even after the war, there were massacres of all sorts of people, just ethnic cleansing on a level that, not compared to the Holocaust, but like, hundreds, thousands of people being just cleansed. And then it all happened again in the 90s. So yeah, that was it. So, exactly. K8, Serbians are Croatian historians, so that's not going to be a good show. I mean, I wasn't going to have them on together. I would hasten to add, I would never have a panel discussion. The idea was I was going to have someone from Croatia talk about what they wanted to from a Croatian point of view. And within the countries, there, of course, there are the race and religion aspects. So you could have a Croatian Muslim, a Bosnian Muslim, a Bosnian Catholic, whatever, and have them on there to talk about it, but it just didn't happen. So here we go. But I do want to get on to, and I'll tell you when you can start asking questions again. Not yet. Give me 10 minutes to talk about AI. I wanted to get on to AI, artificial intelligence, because it's the big subject with regards YouTube and history right now. So the first thing I want to say is it's like nuclear warfare. We can't uninvent it. The genie is out of the bottle. So AI is going to exist. So we can just say, I don't like AI. I hope AI doesn't start getting involved. Well, that's it. That train has, I was going to say that train has sailed. I'm mixing my metaphors. That ship has sailed. That train has gone. AI is going to happen. My basic reaction to tech involved in anything, but specifically history, is that tech should do the things for human beings that we are dull. I mean, I would rather, I'm fine with robots assembling cars on the production line, because and stacking shelves. That's great. I don't want AI to replace the creative impulse, okay? I have used 2 AI images for World War II TV. I was doing one of those Ask Me Anything things, and I got it to make an image of like an old-fashioned microphone and an expert with like drawing boards and notice boards and stuff. And it did a fairly good job, and that's the one time I used it. Greg Way used it to create an image of Kurt Student on trial, because there isn't one, in a show a few weeks ago. But I felt bad about using it, because I could have paid an artist to create that image for me. The problem is, but it's not a problem, because artists have to be paid. So it's one of the reasons I do all my own graphics myself, because there are some very good people doing some very good work with graphics, but they charge. Obviously, they charge. I don't have the budget to pay other people to do editing and create graphics for me, which my graphics aren't great, but I do them myself. So I talk about the banner images I create for the shows. I'm sure people could do a much better job, but I do the work, so they're free. So I will use artists for the right thing. I have commissioned people. I commissioned someone to do a painting of my great uncle. I forgot his name. He's a British friend of mine. Jesus Christ, I pub down lunch dinner with him. Oh, my friend's from Suffolk. Anyway, he did a picture of my great uncle Cyril in Caen, and it cost me whatever it cost me, 75 quid or something like that. So I have used artists. I have I had an artist do a portrait of my first 2 cats I had as an adult. So I will commission artists. I use a very old version of a paint shop, of a Photoshop, a Paint Shop Pro, but I use a very old version because it has all the things I need. I can do the blurred text and overlays and things like that. Because the thing about software is it gets more and more sophisticated with stuff I don't need. So I just keep it for what I need. I need to have a certain amount of layers. I need to take the background out of certain. If I have a picture of eyes now, I'll take out the background so I can overlay I can do all that kind of stuff. It's very basic. And I'll get to some of your questions later on. So going back to AI, AI is a tool. Someone just said it there. So AI should be doing the stuff. Well, so you see, Norma just said this. AI needs to stay out of academia. It makes people intellectually lazy. I'm going to drop a name to you, Norma, because I know you respect this guy, Mike Nyberg. I have, and I'm answering two questions with two. Someone just said, "Do I ever get a bit fanboy over certain guests?" Craig Simons, the first time he was on, I was really nervous about. Nala Ayed, fairly recently, from the Canadian journalist. I don't know why I got nervous about her, but I know that she'd done her own producing and directing and hosting of shows, and I felt she would be she didn't, but I felt she would like be judging me, a one-man band, a former, punk fan who left school at 16 doing this, but she was lovely. So Mike Nyberg, Norma, has been doing a lot of work, and I will have Mike on some point in 2026 talking about AI. Dermot Rooney, who's done some stuff on the channel about Operation Veritable, has done some academic work with AI and how it can be used. So Alan Allport has done some investigation. So the thing is, as I just said, Norma, I'm not picking on you because you're a lovely person, Norma, it's here. AI is here. So it's if people like us just keep going, no, 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 then other people will influence how it develops. If we get involved, then we can help a little bit steering AI the direction we want to be. So the way I think AI should go is things like indexes for books. That's the kind of thing it should be. It should be able to go through and because it's a bigger, more powerful version than a search engine. So, for example, if I want to make sure that I'm not ripping off someone else, AI when I'm writing could go through and say, well, that sentence, you've obviously got that from this book, because the AI will have read that book and say, that's a direct quote. You've pulled that from, let's say, Martin Blumenson's book, right? So as a tool to help the author get a book out there, yes, the AI can do some of that analysis out there, because the AI can go as far as bots go on the internet to check things out. So it has that use. But of course, that is also worrying, because what can it get access to? Because AI is also based on popularity. So as I understand it, if there are AI experts in the audience who can correct me on stuff, please do join in. But if AI finds that there are 9 websites that said Hitler escaped to Argentina and lived after war, but only one that says he died in 1945, AI assumes the 9 websites that said he escaped to Argentina are true. It does also check, so it sounds alarmist, it does also check the credibility of the websites and the number of hits. And it will take something like Britannica Encyclopedia or the British Museum or something like that as a more credible source than Dave in his basement in Tennessee tweeting about flat Earth or something. But the point is that AI is going to be here, and we're just going to have to embrace it and accept the fact that we will try and be involved in it, nurture it rather than dismiss it. Andy Chatterton, what's Andy's saying? Hi, chats, how are you? It's only as good as the data can pick up. We as history fans need to keep putting quality content out there. That's it. But if everyone who writes a book, everyone who puts that book online, everyone who writes a blog, and this is why I'm turning this into going on a tangent. I know there are a lot of people watching right now, no names, no pactorial, who have done enormous amounts of work about their family members or the regiment they're interested in or the town in World War II. All the time that information is only in your head, it is not helping other people get better information. If you start putting it in blogs, if you start putting it on videos, if you start putting it out there, AI will pick it up. Now, I use some writing aid software, which is sort of AI. And what it is, if you don't know, is that it allows, I hate all that passive voice writing aspect. And I kind of use a thesaurus when I'm writing, but what it does is you tell it what kind of style you like, and it'll give you alternative suggestions for sentences and paragraphs. And then you can say, well, that one sounds like what I was trying to say. And then it learns from you. And I'm using that a little bit with the book I'm in my, this has been a bad year, as I said. When I get my head back into the right headspace, I'll carry on again with it. but I will be using that to steer the way I want, because I'm not good at the spelling bit. I'm not good at the trying to think of a different way of, because in military history, you get lots of the unit kicked off at the unit holding the town was probably, it can be repetitive, but this kind of software will help you use more variety in your language, but follow your own intrinsic style. So I'm going to end this bit on AI, because I will be doing some specialist shows about AI in 2026, by saying we should not be scared of it. I'm old enough to remember when my parents' generation was scared by AIDS. I mean, AIDS was obviously a scary, terrible affliction that killed lots of people, but people of my parents' generation thought that if I had contact with someone with AIDS or HIV, I might get HIV from talking to them, or I might catch being gay. That was only 40 years ago, folks, the 80s. And we're in that same era now with trans. I'm not going to go down that massive, great rabbit hole. The point is, everything sounds scary when it starts off, you know. I was reading a thing not that long ago about whichever century it was in the Netherlands, when the Dutch people started really harnessing the wind with windmills. And now when we go to Holland, that part of, and I know Holland isn't the entire country, but that part of the Netherlands where it's very flat and where there are lots of windmills, we see that as part of the landscape. Oh, look at those lovely, quaint windmills. When they first came out, people were like, oh my God, this is ruining the future. What are we doing? We're interfering with God's will, blah, 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 because we're harnessing the wind. Things, when they're new, tend to be off-putting. Music, when it comes out, rap was scary when it first came out. Punk was scary when it first came out. Jitterbugging and jiving. Elvis, remember Elvis's hips? People thought that would corrupt a generation. So AI right now, we're in that, us older folks, and I include myself as an older folks, I could get into it. Now you say, please don't, Jay, I will get into it. I just want to say on this, I have trans friends. I have a very dear friend who I shared a house with, and was a very good friend, who lives most of her life. It's a woman now. Fine. It's good for her. I live and let live is what I say. Trans women are women, trans men are men. That's it. Basically, there's some edges and peripheral things, and there's issues, but that's it. But now, when the more anyone says to me, "Don't talk about it," I would. So if there we are, Baskerville. You wind me up sometimes anyway, Baskerville. So the trans people I know are some of the nicest folks in the world, and just want to be understood as who they are. So there we are. I'm going to be. There you are. If you get anyone who's watching this now who wants to leave, because I'm openly friends with trans people and I respect them and I want them to be acknowledged as who they are, bye. Okay? Right? I'll give you 5 seconds. Okay? One, have a sip of beer. There we are. Trans people are people. Anyway, right, go. So back to where we are. So AI is part of what we're doing now. So there we are. Exactly. Thank you, Mia. Live and let live. Goodness me, Baskerville, do you even know, buddy? Thanks, Andy. Thanks, chats, for being there. I live in a country where I didn't grow up. So I'm an immigrant. It's come up now. It's come up. Peoples have come up, right? Let's forget about AI for a minute. One of the things I get, that Colin, my late departed friend, Colin said, is that expat is a word rich white people use generally to put themselves in a different label than other people. I'm an immigrant. I chose to leave my country. I'm a legal immigrant. I didn't come here escaping anything. Well, mental health issues. But I'm an immigrant, and that's it. And I live in a country where, and I respect the culture here, and I brought up in my culture. I don't expect officers in France to speak French for me English for me when I go in there. I accept that I'm living in France, blah, 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 blah. Thank you very much for saying you love the experts I bring to the channel. I love the experts I bring to the channel as well. They're some great people. I've met people from all over the world. I've had people on this channel from 38 different countries with very different feelings to me. Live and let live, you know. JD, History Underground, he and I, in many areas of our life, we fundamentally see things differently. I'm an atheist. He's a believer. We've had great discussions about belief and theism and deities and the Bible and stuff, and we're still friends, you know, and live and let live. There we are. Yeah, Colin passed away in September. My Dutch friend. Yeah. Anyway, let's go back to some questions outside of things. But if, you know, I am who I am. I'm a fairly liberal, open-minded, live and let live, treat people as you want to be treated, yourself, etc., etc. So let's go back and do some questions, and then so AI is here to stay. There we are. And someone said about the last word about AI. K8 said the die is cast and it's being used currently to educate people in World War II, albeit with inaccurate, made-up photos, images, and stories. Unfortunately, so far, yes. I think right now we're in that thing where bots, and I think it's mostly bots or companies just trying to get clicks and stuff, click farming, are creating nonsensical stuff about Holocaust victims and stories of a GI met a girl in 1943, and then 60 years later he came back and she kept the flower he gave him. And I ranted about this on Facebook the other day. That's not really AI doing that. It's people trying to manipulate using AI as their tool. And there are universities using AI for the right reasons. AI is like a knife, right? Chefs use a knife to cut the edges off a lovely pastry around an apple pie, and murderers use it to stab people. That AI, I'm not saying AI is a knife, but AI is a tool. We can choose to use it to better history, or we can choose to use it to damage history, or just to click far, getting likes and getting money, blah blah blah. Let's go back to some serious questions. So Seamus asked, in your opinion, who are the best and worst Allied Air Army commanders in Northwest European campaign? If you include Italy in that, I'm not a Mark Clark fan, so he doesn't get much of a high marks. I struggle with Patton. Sometimes I think he's great, sometimes I think he isn't. I think Simons and the Canadian is good at times and not others. I'm a big Simpson fan, Ninth Army. I'm a big Truscott fan in Italy. I think, I know we're going down to divisional commanders. I think Urquhart underperformed Arnhem. I think Browning wasn't very good. Brereton was out of his depth in a car park puddle. Not a Brereton fan. I am definitely a Windy Gale fan. He should have been given more to do. Do I think Salah has played his last game for Liverpool? Well, he can't go on forever, can he, Duffers? I mean, how old is he now? 409? I mean, he's probably been your greatest ever striker, and you've had a few bloody brilliant forwards for Liverpool. We're going into football now. Terry Allen, he never really got the chance to kind of be in the position he would have been to really do what he could have done. I'm let's say that. Bradley, I think, has been given a better place in people's memories than he deserves. I don't think he's awful. I think he's competent to mildly good and quite bad. When also I think the Aachen campaign is not his highest. Patch is pretty good. O'Connor is pretty good. Yeah. Leclerc is pretty good, except when he kind of exposes his anti-Asian prejudices in Indochina after the war. But there you are. Oh, just been binging Secret. We're bouncing around now. Just been binging Secret Army. What is your favorite World War II TV drama? Colditz, the TV show with David McCallum and Edward Hardwick and Robert Wagner. The last few episodes, when they weren't escaping anymore, got a little bit drudgery, but that's great. I love the other series that was in the sort of the same vein, The Fourth Arm, back in the 80s, about an SOE mission to France. I've got a cronky old version converted from VHS. It's never been shown again. That's one of my favorites. I did like Rogue Heroes, albeit with all its historical inaccuracies, it made me laugh. It made me entertained. The music was great. What are my favorite hats? So this is my favorite broadcasting hat, and I have a couple of other hats I wear when I'm going out. If you go out, if you come to Bay Air one day, or you meet me when I'll be in London in May for the next conference organized by Edward O'Sullivan. Mary Brazier, I met her in Waterloo when I was filming there last year. She's seen me in some of my outside hats. I have other hats I wear at We Have Ways, but this is my broadcasting hat. I've got, if you follow me on other social media, I occasionally kind of show off my my other hats. So there we are. Let's go and find some more questions. Thoughts on Horrocks? Really good one, George. How are you doing, my friend? Let's have another sip of beer in my Ipswich glass, because why not? The thing about Horrocks is we can't separate Horrocks from Edward Fox, can we, in A Bridge Too Far? And the Edward Fox version of Horrocks, I love. I think I mostly love Horrocks the Commander. And I think he mostly does okay. I think he can be a little bit, as often they are, a bit bitter about other people. And most generals, when they do their memoirs or brigadiers, whatever, they tend to deflect from their own inadequacies by blaming someone else. I think he's a bit guilty of that, but they're all guilty of that. I can't, maybe someone can have an idea in the sidebar, but I can't think of a single memoir where someone is really, really admitting when they fucked up. Most of them are fairly, you know, they're ironing out the bits they've done wrong, and not like celebrity memoirs where they all talk about their addictions. So that's a very different field. If generals from World War II did their memoirs like celebrities do their current memoirs, we'd have some very different books. You know, I really fucked up at Market Garden, but I blame it on, you know, my so-and-so addiction. What's your favorite American fighter plane of World War II? I actually prefer the P-47 to the Mustang. I know that's a lot of popular opinion. I like the P-47. Actually, I kind of like the P-38. I think because of its shape, although it's a Pacific Theater, I kind of like the Corsair. But I like the earlier kind of ones, the ones that were the backbone before the better stuff came in. You know, the P-40s, the Kitty Hawks out in North Africa, the early dive bombers and carrier planes, the Wildcat rather than the Hellcat. I think as the aircraft got better, of course, they had less faults, and therefore they benefited from all the design experience. So they kind of looked better often, and they flew better. But I think I have a bit of affection for the early ones when they weren't doing so well. Yes, Dan, Colditz is Wizard. It is. Can you get McManus on to talk about Eichelberger, please, Norman? Yes, I will. The next time John will be on, it'll be talking about Ridgway, the subject of his next book. I mean, we have talked about Eichelberger in passing when we did the show about Buna in New Guinea with John. But yeah, a specific Eichelberger show would be very good. Let's go and find some more questions and carry on. Bradley had the luck to outlive most of the others and have the final word. Yeah, that's true. And of course, there's a second version of his book that is Widow, kind of amended as well, which is interesting. You know, you've got to compare the two versions. So you know, there we are. Andy Chatterton is asking, how do you feel about the top TV shows, documentaries, i.e. Rogue Heroes? Personally, I think if they bring a new audience in, then all good. That's basically me. Masters of the Air, Rogue Heroes, all those things. People will find it. I found World War II through Warlord comic and Commando books as much as I did with the TV shows like Colditz and Hogan's Heroes and Rat Patrol and things like that. And, you know, there'll always be some people who just see it as, you know, Rogue Heroes is a Peaky Blinders in a different era, isn't it? People who just like kind of action, character-led, star quality, expensive, glossy shows. And then the next one will come on like Slow Horses or Yellowstone. They'll go to that, you know. Documentaries, I think, have generally dropped in quality since I was a kid. Not just World War II, you know, I'm thinking about not just a kid in my teens, you know, the documentary with Michael Wood and things like that. I feel they were aspirational back then. I think there's a lot of dumbing down. A lot of after the break we'll be returning to, and lots of foreshadowing, and Hitler was a bad man. So yeah. Has there ever been a film about General Slim? I don't think there has. There was a stage play that was filmed about Wingate with Barry Foster. Van der Valk played Wingate. So you can buy the DVD and find it on YouTube, I think, where it was obviously it betrays its theatrical background, where there's no set. He's standing there with like a spotlight on, and occasionally they have like a chair and a table, like a tent. He talks about Slim, and I feel Slim might make an appearance. It's been a long time since I saw him, but certainly he gets talked about in that. Let's go and find some more questions, and then question: were both the first and second 5 and 4 far? You remember the two Ronnies sketch where the football scores East 5-4, 4 far 5? This is the one I remember. That's a drunken. I don't know. Peter Hart would be the one to ask about that, because he's the one who studied it. My hunch is there's only one battalion involved, but I don't know. That's one for Peter Hart. Oh, there's a very good one from Seamus. I'll have another sip of beer while I contemplate it. Again, that was more than a swig. My opinions change all the time, but not always permanently. So to explain, this connects with me and my feelings about LGBTQ people and things like that, is that I'm open-minded. I go through life seeing the best in people. Not all people. There are some dickheads out there, but most people, right? So when a historian comes on with a thought about a general or a battle that is apparently opposite to mine, I don't make myself do this. My own brain function is such that I will give that person a chance because I want to hear what they have to say. And sometimes I find myself being quite convinced by an argument when the person is talking about it. And then I'll be still thinking about it later on at night and maybe the next few days. And then gradually, maybe like flood waters sort of subsiding after a flood, I will revert, not completely, but more to where my opinion was before I spoke to the historian in question. So I can't think of any opinion that has been 100% reversed permanently since doing this. There might be something. I think most of the things I went into thinking, I still mostly hold on to, and I have to say, a lot of my thinking, and I'm going to play the neutral card, is that I don't have firm fixed opinions on quite a lot of things. I don't have an absolute firm opinion about Montgomery or Patton or Churchill, because I think it's unwise to. Churchill had let's talk about Churchill. Churchill had a long career and a long life. It would have been impossible for him to do everything in a way that decades later we would say, yep, that was the right thing to do. Of course, he said things that are inappropriate now and were probably inappropriate then. Of course, he didn't handle the miners' strikes in Wales very well. Of course, his feelings about suffragettes were not in line with where we think today. But he also helped considerably win World War II. So it's okay to not be 100% certain. Say Churchill's great. Churchill is a human being like the rest of us. There's things about me that I think are pretty good, and bits I wish I could change about myself. It is. You just have to, be open-minded. I think to good arguments, and indeed to bad arguments. If the person is giving an argument that you think is bad, if they believe in their argument, give them a shout. I mean, we're back to feelings about religion or trans or LGBTQ or whatever it is. I'm not going to get in. There's lots of topics I could bring up right now that people would drive people away, and others would go, yay, let's, gun crime, abortion, Gaza, that I have feelings on, but I'm not going to go into too much stuff. Let's do a couple more questions, then we'll. So we've done commanders. Trevor is saying he's changed his opinion about Anderson in Tunisia multiple times. I think that's okay. I don't think any of us want to be stuck in a position where if you believe, this is based on opinions should be based on evidence, and yet opinions are also subjective. Yeah, so 5 or 6 of us could gather. A World War II TV pub gathering could occur, and we could discuss our favorite World War II films. There's no objective best World War II film. Look at Dunkirk, both versions. That people will say it's a terrible film. The second one, the remake, the modern one. That's not really a fair statement, because a film cannot be objectively bad. Well, actually, there can be some. There are some really terrible 1950s B movies and 80s shockers and some sexploitation SS films that are really bad. But a film like Dunkirk by Christopher Nolan can't inherently be bad. What will happen is some people will think it's dreadful, and some people will think it's great, and some people will think, well, it's all right. But I feel that can't be objectively bad. So the question is that if you believe in something based only on, and I'm going to use the word faith, which is a kind of in terms of religion, but I think there are a lot of people who believe Montgomery is good because they've been in an environment where they've thought everyone around them has said Montgomery is good, or Patton is good, or good commander. The trick is to try and get outside of that box and try and wipe away, erase, etch a sketch, pick up your etch a sketch, remove all your previous opinions. Okay, why do I think this about Montgomery? What is it based on? Look at critically. We're using Montgomery as an example. I've moved on from Churchill and say, okay, how did he handle this campaign? What information did he have? What decisions did he make? What decisions do we think might have been his but actually weren't his? Which is into Market Garden. Montgomery gets blamed for stuff that is Brereton's decision. Montgomery gets blamed for stuff that's Browning's. Browning gets blamed for stuff that's Urquhart or Brereton's. If you're going to hold someone up to something, hold them up to what it is they did, but not for someone else's decision-making. Mary's the right person to ask about it, because Mary is a very decent person who understands the complexity of the human mind because of the work she does. So Mary, we often look for binary. Was someone good or bad, etc.? But humans are complex and have bad days, strengths, and weaknesses. Thank you. Hat off to you, Mary. That's it. There we are. I'm going into I've had too much beer. Well, I haven't had too much beer. I've had lots of beer. What is your feeling on when World War II started? That, John, is a really good question. An event as complex and as globally encompassing as World War II can have more than one legitimate start dates. Again, it's the binary thing. So I'm going to use punk music as an analogy, right? Because I'm a big punk fan. The Damned, I believe, produced the first proper punk single in the UK, New Rose, in 1976. It was also the first UK punk record in the US. But punk, as a slightly different concept, had already started in the USA with things like the New York Dolls. You could even take punk back to garage rock. You could say certain 1960s songs are punk in attitude, but then punk was a term that was really only you. Well, punk. You see 1950. Actually, I'm going on a tangent now. 1950s and 40s, like those 1940s kind of gang movies in New York, the Bowery Boys things. So they'll say, yeah. This punk on the street said this. So punk is a term, has been around for a long time. Okay, A punk, as in a punk rock, punk music fan, is a 70s concept. So what I'm saying is there's no definitive argument for when punk music started, because it depends on interpretation. And the same applies, John, to the Second World War. Now, my granddad, cheers, granddad, long since departed, he said, he was born in 1911. So he was like 7 at the end of the First World War. He said, it wasn't 2 world wars, son. He said it was one big world war with an extended half-time break. That was his and by the way, I did see the question about my best World War II joke. But my best World War II joke is one of those shaggy dog stories, and it will go on, and people will just leave in their droves. If and when you come to it's a terrible joke, and I'm not going to do it now. Don't ask me to do it. I'm not going to do it now. David Duffy knows the joke. It's the one about the desert, the patrol in the desert, Duffy. You've heard that one. And you grow and you hate it, and you hate me for doing it. It still makes me laugh, because it makes me laugh that people, because it isn't objectively funny. It's subjectively funny. Meet me in a pub one day, folks. I'll say my joke. Anyway, so if you're in the Sino-Japanese theater, then absolutely World War II starts earlier than 1939. I mean, 37, arguably even earlier than that, okay? If you're in Spain or France, definitely the Spanish Civil War is round 1 of World War II. There's a grave. This is my friend Colin. Cheers, Colin. I'm going to just give a cheers to my friend Colin Taylor. The world is a worse place without you, cantankerous old cunt. I miss you a lot. Our favorite grave, if you can have a such thing as a favorite grave, is in the Tilly-sur-Seulles cemetery, about 10 miles south of Bayeux. And it's a Jewish lad. And the inscription says, died fighting from the Nazis from 1936 to 1944. Because Nathan Lerner, you can look him up on the CWC website, was a Jew who had fought on the streets of Cable Street in the 1930s in London against Oswald Mosley's fascists. Now, presumably, whoever agreed upon that epitaph for his grave, I don't now off the top of my head remember whether he was married or had his parents, but his family members decided that he had been fighting the Nazis since 1936 in the Battle of Cable Street. If you don't know about the Battle of Cable Street, yes, Dermot, as a term of endearment. Australians particularly will use that as, how are you, old? And I won't say it, yeah, I've said it once because I might get demonetized on YouTube. Thank you, Gina, to Colin. This weekend was a bad one. I missed him a lot. I forgot where I was now. What was I talking about? Oh my God, someone get my train of thought back. I've completely forgot what I was talking about. Good grief. What the hell? Yeah, the start of the war. Yeah. So Nathan Lerner's family believed he died in a battle he'd been fighting since 1936. So subjectively, for the Lerner family, World War II started in 1936. So to answer your question, John, get back to that. There doesn't have to be a definitive start of World War II. From an American point of view, it can be December the 7th, 1941, which was yesterday, the 84th anniversary. The other thing is, when did World War II end? I mean, it's as complicated because it morphs into civil wars and the loss of independence for the deserved loss of independence for British and French countries, run countries. So, you know, it's there. If you haven't been to the Cable Street Memorial, it's near where Mary works in London. It's not the most fantastic thing in London, but the Cable Street mural is really good, and you can do a little walking tour. You can get off, and you can various stations around Southwark through to kind of Whitechapel and what have you. You can see some of the Jack the Ripper sites, and you can go to the pub. Which Mary will talk about the pub is. I forgot the name of the pub. The pub where the prostitutes and if you haven't read Hattie, what's her name? What's her name? Wrote the five, not Hattie. The book about the Jack the Ripper murders, where she basically gave these women an identity. Is Hallie Rubenhold, is that she wrote about these women from the point of view of their victimhood. And there's big questions about whether or not they were actually women of the streets, or whether they were just impoverished. Anyway, you can go to London, you can do a tour of the Jack the Ripper murder sites, you can go to the pub where the Jack the Ripper murder victims drank, you can go to the police station where the chief inspector, the guy played by Michael Caine in the TV series, I can't think of his name now. You can have a nice curry in Whitechapel, and you can go to the Cable Street Mural. You can do a little walking tour of that part of the East End of London, which is fantastic. There we are. He was Terry Nathan was first playing Dorsetshire Regiment, and killed in the fighting around Tilly, sort of Langers, that kind of area there. Me and Colin, incidentally, we wrote a draft of a screenplay idea for a movie about Nathan Lerner that will never, well, I wouldn't do it without Colin now. It was an idea me and Colin had. He mostly had it, and I joined on. It was a pub. The pub idea. And we created 3 other characters around Nathan Lerner who we were going to fictionalize. And then we were going to do a story about these 4 people who 2 or 3 of them meet in Cable Street in 1936, or they're there at Cable Street. Then they meet again in Normandy 44. One was going to be a German doctor. One was going to be Nathan Lerner. One was going to be just a regular British Joe who, at the time of 1936, had been part of Oswald Mosley's, backstreet fascists, but then sees the error of his ways. And then I forget who the 4th figure was now. It might have been Nathan Lerner's wife. And the fictitious version. I mean, we drafted this version of a story that but it will never happen. So there we are. Question for all: who is your favorite character in World War II, and what is her biggest mistake during the war? I have an absolute definitive answer to this question. I have lots of others in the top 10, 20, 30. I think I've said this before on an Ask Me Anything. I read a book a few years ago that absolutely profoundly changed my life. It made me question who I was as a human being, as a partner of someone, as a son, as a historian, as a human being. And it was the book about Violet Szabo, the SOE agent, by her daughter, Tanya, which I have a copy signed by Tanya to me. And Young, Brave and Beautiful is the book, 2015. And it's interesting because I'd read several books about the SOE, and Dr. Kate Vigas has done some great work on the SOE, and Helena Fry and other people who I can't go into now. I knew Violet Szabo's story. Yes, David, Colin has done the best at Change RP. God, he was a cantankerous arsehole. I miss him so much. I miss you as well, Duffers. We need to have another Zoom conversation. Love you to bits, my friend. I'd read about the SOE, and I knew getting the book written by her daughter. So if you don't know the story, Violet Szabo had a French mother and an English father, grew up in London, but spent a lot of time in France, and she spoke French. She became an SOE agent, and she ended up jumping into France around the time of D-Day, before D-Day. Long story short, was picked up by the Gestapo, and she was shot along with 2 other SOE agents I forget where she was shot now, but she didn't survive the war. And there was a film made, Carve Her Name with Pride, with Virginia McKenna as Violet Szabo. And I read the book, and this is where it harks back to what I was saying earlier, knowing that it wouldn't be fully objective because it's by her daughter, because her daughter was wherever she was, 5 years old, 6 years old when her mother died. So I knew it wouldn't be objective, although Tanya was doing her best to be objective about her mother, and did a very honest book about her. It's a very hard book to get, by the way, these days. I think it is. And sorry for pausing a lot, because I'm having to really consider this and what it meant to me. So the first thing is I absolutely fell in love with Violette Szabo within about 10 pages. This feisty young woman who, there's one story that sticks in my mind from the book, where when she was going through SOE training, she did a backflip at a party or an after training event or something, and people were dressing up, and there was nudity. Anyway, she did some kind of jump, and her bra fell off or something, and she ended up displaying her nichon is the French word, her threepenny bits to the room. And she just laughed and embraced it all, and it was very funny. And it was more insight to Violette Szabo that I'd ever had before, albeit written by her daughter. And so Violette Szabo sits at the top of my list, but completely subjectively. I'm not saying she did the most contribution to World War II. I'm just saying my life is, it sounds very pretentious, but my life is divided into two halves in terms of before reading Young, Brave and Beautiful, and after reading Young, Brave and Beautiful. And I was not the same person at the end of that beer as I was at the beginning of the beer. Are you saying A Car for Name of Pride is a terrible movie, David? It's not the best movie. It's a bit clunky, but it's all right. But in terms of other figures in World War II, how long have you got? Some of the veterans I met and spoke to were very important. A lot. Susan, yeah, you must get this book. Just find it. It's definitely worth reading. And her daughter did get her medals. Certainly in the movie she did. I think she did in reality. And Tanya, she was 5 in 44. She's mid-80s, late 80s now or something. She was living in Jersey for a long time. Anyway, throw me a couple more questions, and then we'll bring this to end, because I will need to go for a Jimmy Riddle at some point, because the beer is coming. I've got a little bit more to get through. There's a bit more in the bottle. Ha ha. Do you like seeing slightly lubricated Woody? I had a question from Jay about, what do you think of the impact of the death of Leslie McNair? I don't know. It had much effect at the time. I think his death coming when it did at the beginning of Cobra. If you don't know the story, General Leslie McNair is he's in my list of geniuses. He's up there with Barnes Wallis. He was proposing ideas for tank destroyers and tanks back in the 1930s. He was an army officer who was trying to improve ground-air cooperation in the Normandy campaign when he was killed by the bombardment at the beginning of Operation Cobra. Ironically, whatever he would have filed as a report on his observations of ground-to-air would have been interesting. His reports about tank warfare, his reports, and Terry in the audience, when Alan did his show, Alan is his real name, Terry's his pen name, when he did the show about the 50th Division, McNair, correct me if I'm wrong, McNair had done a kind of a study of the 50th Division. He saw all sorts of underlying issues with the 50th Division that probably were hiding in plain sight to people in the 50th Division, but he was outside of it and saw it all. Whatever he would have said about air cooperation in Normandy, had he not been killed, would have identified all the problems, because he knew the guy was good, right? But by the time he dies, the problems are starting to be cured of their own volition, if you like, in that the cooperation is starting to come to a head. They have got the cab ranks. They now have the embedded pilots on the ground in connection with the aircraft. So So although he was killed in a friendly fire, friendly bombing incident, it was the last of the big ones before things got better. Does that make sense? And yes, Trevor, he was influential. I mean, wherever he studied, he was influential. So was not McNair. Who was the no, I'm not thinking of McNair. I'm thinking of sorry, Terry. I'm thinking of Hargist, aren't I? That's what I'm thinking of. Hargist, the New Zealander. He's the Ned report. So that's where I'm getting things mixed up there. I'm not perfect. There we are. Did his Mark Clark deserve his reputation in Cobra? Mark Clark? Do you mean Mark Clark is Italy? Do you mean, who do you mean by that? Do you mean Lawton Collins? Do you mean Middleton? For Mark Clark in Italy, ask Mia, our Ranger expert. That will be really interesting. Yes, Terry, that's it. Hargis, that's what I'm talking about. There we go. This is me with beer. There we are. I'll have a sip of beer. The viewer numbers are dropping off now. It was all right until the host got a little bit squiffy, said the comments. There we are. It's gone. I have another one when I finish doing this. So, there we are. Yeah, the death of General Frank Andrews. We did a show with Kathy. I forget her second name. First appearance, one and only appearance in World War II TV. And she's one of those historians who just came out of nowhere and did this incredible book about Andrews and came on, did an incredible show about Andrews. I'm saying about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago. And yeah, could have easily, well, it's fairly certain that he would have gone on to something. What he would have gone on to, who knows? But yeah, died and didn't get a chance to do it. So yeah, watch that show. Thanks for seeing me in a slightly more relaxed fashion. Yeah, the problem about me having had now 75 centiliters of 7.5% beer is that it's lubricated the old system. I'm on that point where I'm not drunk yet, but I'm just on that cusp. I'm on the cusp of descending into an evening of merriment, but I'll be on my own after this. I might have a couple more. We will see. The thing is, if I can't get, when Mag's here, I can send her a message and say, bring me another beer from the fridge. But the fridge we keep the beer in is downstairs. I'd be like gone for like 5 minutes. So I'm not going to go and get another beer. Oh, now Jim, possibly the best question of any Ask Me Anything ever, right? I have a couple of favorite TV shows of all time. And by favorite, I specifically mean not best, because favorite can be based on when you watched it, the feelings it draws out in you. So amongst my favorite TV shows, the young ones, the irreverent, anarchic, anti-establishment comedy from the early 80s with Rick Mayall and Adrian Ebenson, Christopher Ryan, Nigel Planer, is up there. But The Prisoner, Patrick McGoohan, 1960s. Not the last episode, Jim. The last episode spoils a bit. When I rewatch it, I watch it about once a year. And I always tell myself, stop it before the last couple of episodes. I can't. The one with Eric, what's his name? The actor who was in the original Cold It story, Eric Portman, where he's number 2. I forget that one's called. That's one of my favorites. I like the two-hander with Leo McKern when he's trying to break in the psychiatry one where they talk about World War II and being a bomber crew. Basically, I just love The Prisoner. You've seen no, in a way, I don't put them in the same category at all. Now, Danger Man, which some people say The Prisoner, Patrick McGoohan's character, is the agent from Danger Man, but Patrick McGoohan never admitted that. Danger Man and the Avengers are on a par, absolutely. the Avengers, and I love the Avengers. Actually, bizarrely, my favorite girl was Linda Thorson, the last one. And then Honor Blackman, then Diana Rigg. I buck the trend there. I like, they're all great. I just think Linda Thorson was better. Anyway, but The Prisoner was more than just a spy show. The Prisoner was trying to say something. I mean, the thing is, it didn't get its messages clear. It's an inherently flawed series. By the way, Al Murray loves The Prisoner. It didn't get everything right. They were constraints of budget, what the directors wanted, the producers wanted, and it wasn't quite what the vision. But The Prisoner had illusions of grandeur, I guess, and is trying to say something about self and identity and the human condition that the Avengers and the Saint didn't do. Oh, and thank you. My other all-time favorite drama series is Columbo, which I watch a lot. And I cannot tell you how many times I've watched some of those episodes. And I know, you know at the beginning of a Columbo episode who did it and why. It's that I just love Peter Falk's performance. I love not some of the longer episodes when they pad it out a bit, get a bit long, but the ones with Jack Cassidy, the ones with Robert Culp are just classics. I love Columbo. My God, we've gone on for some tangents now. I don't know that I have a favorite Commando comic book, although I remember my first one, although I don't know what it was called. And it was one of those moments of synchronicity, timing, blah, blah, blah. So in our village growing up, my village, West Burgolt, west of Colchester, has a bigger population now than when I was there by about 3 times. I don't even know what the population was. But back in the day, when I was a kid, there were more shops there than there are now, even though it's 3 times bigger because of people going to big shopping centers. But down one of the roads in West Burgolt was a little proper old-fashioned sweet shop, candy shop, you Americans would say, where you could buy, where they would weigh them out from the jar, your sherbet lemons and your fruit salads and your cola cubes and your Murray mints and all that kind of stuff, and your the mint imperials and the strawberry bonbons. And it was called Mrs. Cuckoo's because, yes, it's my favorite episode. Is the one with Donald Pleasance, the one with the wine. That and the Jack Cassidy one where he's the magician is also a favorite. All of them, really. I love them all. Right. So and so the sweet shop. Get back to the story, Paul. The shop was owned by Mrs. Cuckoo. Her name, I think it was her name. I don't know if I'm questioning it now. I don't know. Anyway, we all called it Mrs. Cuckoo's. I assume it was her name, but maybe it wasn't. And this is when you could get back in, we're talking about when I was like 6 or 7. So we're talking about 1976, 1977. And you could get a hell of a lot for 5p. My pocket money back then was probably 20p a week, and then it went up to 50p a week a bit later on. Oh, the Leonard Nimoy one as the surgeon. Yeah, very good one, Jamie. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, Stitch in Time, that one's called. It is an English name. It may have been her real name, but it may have just been a nickname. I don't know. It doesn't matter for the story. And it was down the street at the end of the road from where my granddad and my grandma and my granny lived. So I was 7, and we were walking down. We weren't. It was when I will do the best Allied commanders in a minute. I'm doing sweet shops, Saxon Warrior. There's a hierarchy of importance here. Now, with my granddad, I was able sometimes to pretend, because he'd say, "Where do you want to walk today?" And we'd go and walk. But if I was clever, I could end up walking past the sweet shop without it looking like I'd deliberately walked past the sweet shop. And then in a kind of, we're by the sweet shop. And my grandma said, "Would you like some sweets?" And we go and get a quarter of something or other. And this particular day, so I was about 6 or 7, we'd been walking. My granddad had been talking about his experience in World War II. and he was in the Royal Artillery, mostly with searchlights and anti-aircraft. Okay, so we are down memory lane. Memory lane. And he'd been talking about searchlights. We're going to Mrs. Cuckoo's, who also sold comics, and I guess she did newspapers. I assume so. One of those little shops that kind of was like the size of a back shed, but sold everything. And she was like 703 years old and 4 foot tall in my memory. And a granddad said, do you want a quart of sweets? And I was probably going to order whatever I was going to order, strawberry bonbons or something, Coke bottles, or it was. But as we went in there, this became my first ever Commando book. I should remember the title, but I haven't got it. I should find it. Someone there will find it for me. But the Commando comic was about searchlight units in World War II. And on the front of the cover was a picture of a British Army searchlight. And my granddad said, and it was all, we'd been talking about searchlight. That's what I was doing in World War II. And I hadn't seen the comic before, and he was there and I was there, and he bought me the comic, and I got the quarter of sweets as well. And I went back home and I read that comic book. And from then on, I started reading Commandos and Battle Libraries and Battle Action and all the other comics. And I remember going to jumble sales, which I apologize for using British, English, Essex slang. But jumble sales were often organized by the local scout group or the primary school, and it was people just sold junk, jumble junk for pocket money stuff. And I'd be able to go there. I would go there as a kid, and you'd get a big bundle. There'd be older boys. By older, I mean like they were 10 or 11, and they would be on their mum's stall, and they would have tied up with string, a bundle of comics, like in string or like with brown paper around them, and they'd be like 10p for 20 or something. And I would buy, and I had I don't know how many dozens, hundreds of these I had. I had Panini football stickers and all this kind of stuff there. I never read Victor. I don't know why. Victor was not cool in our village. Victor was like, no, we don't do it. We did Warlord. I had my codename Warlord thing. But they're kind of like car boot sales, but without the car and less classy. I mean, I'm not saying car boot sales are classy. Oh, I was a Beano lad, not a dandy lad. I only read dandies if someone gave me. I never bought a dandy, but I had a subscription to the Beano. But did you know this, right? So there are British people watching this, and Americans, and people from around the world as well. Okay, look this up on Wikipedia. This isn't me saying this. There are 2 schoolboy, naughty school child characters called Dennis the Menace. Right? There's a British Dennis the Menace, and there's an American Dennis the Menace, both of which have inspired comics. And look this up, because this sounds like I'm making this shit up, right? 2 writers, completely independent of each other, without knowing of each other's existence, both invented the character of Dennis the Menace. I'm going to say the same day. It was certainly the same week, and it was absolutely. Look this up. It's one of those weird things. I'm an atheist, but I think coincidences can be real, right? Look this up, right? There's a British Dennis the Menace, black hair, red and black stripy jumper, pull over for Americans. And there's an American Dennis the Menace, yellow spiky hair. British Dennis the Menace's dog is called Nasher. I don't know whether Dennis the Menace in America has a dog or not. They both are naughty schoolboys, right? But both characters were invented on the same time on opposite sides of the Atlantic, completely independently. Look this up, right? Honestly. Terry says, yes, this is real. It's one of those, when I first found this out, I was like, fuck, no, how can that be? Okay, I know Dennis rhymes with menace. It's not surprising that 2 characters called Dennis who were menaces were invented. What's amazing is it was the same fucking day, right? Right, look it up. Okay, there we are. God, we've gone on some tangents now. We did my favorite hats. We did whether I drink coffee or tea. I don't drink either. We did The Prisoner, Patrick McGowan. and now we're doing comic book stuff. So I think it probably is time for me to go. I said I was going to do about 1 hour and 15. It's been 1 hour and 49 minutes. Viewer numbers are dramatically dropping because people are going, yeah, he's just wandered off. Someone give me. Okay, well, no, let's. He keeps asking. Top 5 army generals of World War II. So I'm not giving this any thought. This is reaction. This is like, psychiatry tests. Slim, Eichelberger, Truscott, Model, Rokossovsky. Okay? That's instinctive, okay? And I try deliberately, although I'm being instinctive, to not just go for British guys. If you ask me again, I'd do a different 5. There we are. That's just immediate reaction. Now, someone throw me one more World War II question so that we can end on a high, because I feel that ending on Dennis the Menace and comics and stuff is not a very worthy way to finish. Solid list. Okay, no Japanese generals. This is I haven't done as much reading about the Japanese. This is my reaction to things. And I don't even know why I said Model. I thought to myself, say a German one. I could have said Manstein. I can do another 15 minutes though, because I will need a piss at some point. It's all right now. So throw me a question or two, and then I'll do it, because I'm all loosened up now. And this is by no means am I having a go at you, AC75 R07. But one of the, I've said this before, and the viewer numbers are plummeting now, is that one of the it goes with the territory aspects about YouTube and comments, is that I could do a show with an expert about, like with Terry, about the 50th Division. Someone will say, that's really great. What about the 49th Division? You go, okay, yeah, sure. This one wasn't about the 49th Division. This was about the 50th. If you talk about something, someone will always say, but you didn't talk about this. That's how life works, right? It's weird. You offer someone something and they go, yeah, that's great, but can I have this as well? Anyway, biggest World War II myth that you wish would go away, never to be seen again. I mean, when I saw that, my initial reaction, but it's not the important one, was Heinz Severloh, the machine gun on Omaha Beach. Because he didn't kill thousands of Americans. I don't think there's a single myth. I mean, the fact that FDR knew about Pearl Harbor, that one really, really boils my piss. Really. Really. And the people who cling on to this idea that FDR knew about it are just fucking idiots. Sorry. I can't. There's no other way of saying it. I do wish I'm part of that World War II myths page on Facebook, and I read the comments and I just shake in my head and I go, Jesus Christ, guys and women, you need to do some more bloody reading. Broaden your bloody horizons. Here's a good one from Gina. 3 World War women, not Violette, who you admire. My grandma. My granny did some work on an airbase in Earl's Colne and other air bases. Granny, Joyce Raymond, her name was. What's her name? The air intelligence interpreting the photos. Double-barreled name, played by Sylvia Sims. Constance Barrington. Constance, what's her name? Her. You think I'd know her bloody name, wouldn't you? You know who I mean. the woman I know. And yes, I agree. Eleanor Roosevelt as well. Jay White just said. Babington Smythe, yeah. Oh, and Josephine Baker. Yes, thanks, Andreas. But there's plenty others. Fish and chips or bangers and mash. Okay, there's actually a way of answering this, and this is going to mention Colin again. One of my things with Colin, our things, was drawing out. Oh, and Audrey Hepburn, yeah, was drawing out nonsense conversations for a whole fucking night at the pub, right? Like which is the best biscuit, which cake with this, whatever. And when we discussed what our final meal would be, we both agreed on fish and chips. If we were on death row, you knew you were dying, it would be fish and chips because, but that's specifically because you can't do fish and chips at home. Fish and chips is a going out, and it's a chippy. I don't want it at a restaurant. I don't want fish and chips at some, fancy. I want fish and chips from a fucking prop. You know how they smell that way? With a high counter where you can see the cod there, and it's hot, and there's that smell that is oil and mushy peas and vinegar and just the heat. And all that stuff. So fish and chips is my favorite outside meal. But bangers and mash is a meal you do at home. So I would choose a sausage myself, and it'd probably be a Cumberland. And I would do my own onion gravy. I would do my own mash. So bangers and mash is a meal I do at home. Fish and chips is a meal I have outside. There we are. That's what would have happened if after sea lions failed, the Germans had tried to annex Switzerland, Sweden, Spain in War 3. There's not enough data to extrapolate on to make a decision. My hunch tells me that a deal with Switzerland to have got some more finance, some sort of arrangement with Switzerland to fund the military effort would have been significant. I thought you were going to ask what would have happened if Sea Lion had worked, because Sea Lion was never going to work. History in your hand. Hi, Rob. If you could only visit one place in Normandy for the rest of your life, where would it be? So you're probably going to think I'm going to say something World War II. And if I was limited to World War II, it would be the Falaise Gap or Mortain. But no, I'm going to say the Falaise Gap. But if we're talking about just me as a human being, it would be the western coast of the Cotentin, and it would be the Barneville, Carteret area, or anywhere up towards Cherbourg. And this is to do with it connects with me and Mag and our being together for 10 years and blah blah blah. And when we were in Marseille a few weeks ago, and Marseille, I had a great time in Marseille. I'm going back to Marseille, brilliant place. But the beaches there, and the beach I went to, one of the beaches I went to was the beach that Gene Hackman stands over in French Connection 2. I matched up some photos on Facebook, if you follow me on Facebook. But we're talking about 30 meters of sand going out to sea and about 200 meters on left or right. Carteret, Barneville, low tide. I shit you not. The beach is a mile out to sea. Maybe not a mile, but it's hundreds of yards. This is the biggest expanse of sand and beautiful. And there's an old ruined church that overlooks the bit on the cliffs. And you go to the little town. The town's a little bit kind of arty-farty, pretentious, touristy shops selling the blue and white stripes, but it's nice bars. But the bit outside of Barneville, Carteret, so that is my favorite bit, is the western beach of the Cotentin. And it is a largest tidal range. Is that the place where they have amphibious bus? That's the eastern coast. That's up towards from Saint-Var-le-Hogue across to the island of so-and-so. Yeah, that was brilliant. Did you mean my explanation about fish and chips and bangers and mash? I hope so, Roderick. Although generally, my handling of the show. What is your opinion on Monty's handling of Sicily? One of the controversies seems to be how Highway 124 was taken away from American 45th Division in some time. I don't know that I have any opinions about that. I think Sicily is the beginning of the press really going in, drilling down on the rivalry between commanders. And I think all of that, the way the press got Monty to say things about Patton and Patton to say things about Montgomery and Alexander, all that stuff, I think all of that affects the Sicily campaign. I think broadly, I agree with the fact the Americans had the slightly easier push across Sicily, and the British with the Catania plain and Primosole Bridge had the slightly tougher response. I think the German response, Italian response, was maybe greater than expected. I don't know that it matters what Montgomery or Patton did. I think I'm not dismissing Sicily as a campaign. Sicily was an important campaign, but Sicily was a big old extended training exercise in some ways. It was how the Allies again reacted to working together. Operation Torch, Tunisian campaign, and seen some high points and some low points. And Sicily was sort of a get it out of your system, lads. Get this cooperation thing out. And it gives Eisenhower lots of clues as to how these commanders will or won't work in the field. Exactly, John. It's the Allies learning how to run an invasion together. You said that better than I was trying to explain it. Yes, I would agree the Canadians get thrown to the toughest fighting. But yeah, do I blame Montgomery for not opening Antwerp when he recommended Operation Infatuate, take the Scheldt to stem was declined by Roberta? I mean, my initial response is yes. But there's a lot of other factors at play. And I think it's quite easy now, and this will be my last question. It's been 2 hours now. It's quite easy now to see that not enough focus was put on the Scheldt Estuary. But at the time, there's the meme or the cartoon of like the person standing at doorways and which is the right door to go through, that kind of concept of just, there were so many options at play in August, September 44. We had Kevin Hiemel on, yes, he talked about the Metz area, the possibility of going into Germany, that direction of the Moselle. There's the Hergen Forest, which is sort of drawing attention. There's a Scheldt Estuary. It's easy now to show more should be done about the Scheldt, but it's one of several plays on the go at the time, okay? You know, when those chess masters play multiple games at one time. And the Scheldt Estuary is one of several games going on. If it was the only game going on, I think, yes, absolutely, Montgomery and Eisenhower, everybody else should have done more. The Scheldt Estuary was not handled well. But I think there are too many other things going on as well that are distractions. And I think most of what we see about the Scheldt Estuary, nearly all of what we see about the Scheldt Estuary is Monday morning quarterbacking. It's 2020 vision. We should have done this. Yes, we should have done more but I think at the time, I think it was easy to not see it. Does that make sense? Last question, because I really, really will need to go and have a pee, or I'm going to end up peeing my pants. Brian, first time visit to Normandy last week. Really, our visit was all the way to having read your Angels of Mercy book and having watched World War II TV. Thank you for all that you do. I'm glad you had a good time. It wasn't the best weather last week, but you have the sights to yourself. That's the great thing. Finding restaurants open in the evening is tricky, but I like touring battlefields in the winter. It's when I have to tour battlefields in the winter. There we are. I'm going to leave it at that because I'm going to need to go for a pee and I'm going to have a second beer and probably do something else, muck around on the computer for an hour or two before I go to bed because it is, what time is it? It's 10 o'clock here now. Not this late, but I've got nothing to do, in fact. It's pretending I've got something to do, I haven't. So there we are. I'll end it all. Dermot, I was going to mention you because you were going to come to my AI discussion, but we'll do it next year because I know you've been doing some work on that. Tomorrow, Zeta is on. We're talking about Montgomery and Eisenhower in the Ardennes. Charlie Stewart is on Thursday. He's working on a really fantastic new book about the Ardennes. Lots of stuff about that. As always, click, like, and subscribe. I'd love to see a couple more subscribers and a few, dozens of more subscribers and a couple more patrons after today. There we are. Oh, my favorite tank museum. Bob Vincent Tank Museum is great. Top of my head, favorite museum. I like the Guinness Museum in Dublin. I don't like the Invalides in Paris. Pegasus Bridge is a good museum. Best museum. Hendon is good. The various regimental museums in Winchester is good. D-Day story in Portsmouth is good. That's it. I'll see you all next time. Cheers, everybody. Thanks for watching. I love you all. Some of you, most of you. I like one of you. You're all right. You're nice. Cheers. Bye, everyone.